Armand Kapoor had spent the better part of 30 years believing that life was something to be conquered. As a self-made millionaire, the kind often featured in glossy magazines and economic reviews, he had learned to calculate risks, quantify gains, and outpace competition with the precision of a racing heartbeat. But despite the towering glass buildings he owned, the fleet of cars he never got time to drive, the world tours he barely remembered, and the bank balance that newspapers occasionally speculated about, Armand always felt a faint, unnameable emptiness, like a room in his heart that had never been opened. It was an emptiness that refused to be silenced by luxury. And then, as he sat in his private jet on a calm, golden morning, he admitted to himself that the room had a name: Mare. His childhood love, his first and last unanswered question. He had not thought of her in years, or so he liked to pretend. But success has a strange way of reminding a person of unfinished stories. On the night before his 38th birthday, as he stood on the balcony of his penthouse watching city lights blink like artificial stars, he suddenly remembered the shy smile of a girl with oil-plaited hair and almond eyes, Mare, who had helped him study for exams in school, who had given him half her tiffin even when she was hungry, who had stitched his torn shirt sleeve once during a school competition because he was too embarrassed to go on stage with it. She was someone who believed in small, gentle things, someone who wrote poems in margins of notebooks and believed that someday her dreams would find a home. The next morning, before logic could catch up with emotion, Armand ordered his pilot to prepare the jet. His assistant asked if he needed security detail. Armand refused. He wanted no barriers, no polished image, no business armor. Just himself, the boy from an old neighborhood with cracked pavements and monsoon puddles, returning for answers. The town had changed since he last saw it. What used to be narrow roads with pawn stains and cycle shops was now an expanding suburb with cafes, clinics, and shiny new apartments. But the air, he thought as he stepped out of the car, still carried the same scent of dusty mango trees and distant temple bells. He asked around quietly, trying not to draw attention. Millionaires do not walk unnoticed in small towns, but Armand kept his cap low, his sunglasses on, and his tone soft. A shopkeeper finally pointed him to a small library at the end of a lane lined with bougainvillea. "She works there," the man said. "Mare Sharma, the quiet one." Armand felt an unfamiliar flutter in his chest. He walked toward the library, each step echoing years of silence, every memory unfolding like an old postcard. The library was small, sunlit, and peaceful, shelves rising like silent guardians around a central wooden desk. And at that desk sat Mare, her head bent over a pile of returned books. For a moment, time blurred. She looked older. Yes, hair tied in a neat bun instead of plaits, faint freckles still hugging her cheeks, and the same calm aura that had made her unforgettable. But she also looked exactly as he remembered. Unhurried, gentle, wrapped in a simplicity that felt rarer than diamonds. When she finally looked up, her eyes widened, not in shock, not in excitement, but an indescribable mixture of recognition and disbelief. "Armand," she whispered, almost as if afraid the name might shatter something delicate. He smiled, awkward and unsure for the first time in years. "Hi, Mare, it's been a long time." And in that moment, he wasn't a millionaire, wasn't a success story, just a boy returning to the place where he had left a piece of himself. They sat and talked. At first, the conversation was polite, cautious, like two people stepping into a river they once swam in as children but now feared might be colder. But soon, old familiarity began to paint their words. Mare laughed softly at one of his clumsy jokes, an unplanned sound that hit Armand with a wave of nostalgia. He asked about her life. She told him she taught children in the afternoons, volunteered at an old-age home on weekends, and spent the rest of her time running the library. Her voice carried no bitterness, no sense of missed opportunities. She had built a life of purpose, quiet dignity, and heartfelt connections. And then, unexpectedly, unintentionally, Armand asked why she never married. The question slipped out before he could filter it, before he could remind himself that he had no right to pry. Mare hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of a book. "Because," she said softly, "I never met someone who felt right." Her cheeks turned faintly pink, as though embarrassed by the plainness of her answer. Armand felt guilt prick his chest. She had loved him once, and he had left the town to chase dreams without even a proper goodbye. but then she added something so quiet he almost missed it. I never gave myself to anyone. I'm still untouched. She blinked, steady yet vulnerable. Not because I was waiting for someone heroic or special. I just didn't feel ready. Armand felt the shock first as silence, then as a strange ache. Not because of the word she used, but because of the weight behind it. In a world where everyone hurried to grow up, to move on, to find someone, to break and remake themselves, here was Mare, who had preserved something profoundly personal simply because she believed she should not rush her heart. It wasn't innocence, it was strength. A strength he had never possessed. For the first time in a long time, Armand felt unworthy. He did not say anything impulsive. He did not confess. He did not claim destiny. Instead, he spent the next few days quietly returning to the library. Some days they talked about books, some days about childhood memories, some days about dreams she still held secretly. Mare grew comfortable again, smiling more openly, sometimes teasing him for his terrible poetry skills. Armand, on the other hand, found himself experiencing something he had forgotten long ago: peace. One evening, as the sun dipped into an amber horizon and the town glowed under street lamps, Armand walked Mare home. Her house was small but warm, covered in tulsi plants and wind chimes. As they reached the gate, she turned to him. Armand, why did you really come back? Her question was direct, sharper than her usual softness. Armand inhaled deeply. To see you, he admitted. Because I realized, in all my success, in all the noise, I left behind the only part of my life that ever felt real. Mare lowered her gaze, unsure, a fragile uncertainty crossing her face. People change, she said. Lives change. He nodded. Mine did, and yours did, but some things don't. Some things remain unfinished. She looked at him then, truly looked at him, as though trying to find the boy she once knew hidden beneath the layers of wealth and years. I'm not someone extraordinary, she said. I live quietly, simply. Armand smiled, a soft, helpless smile. And that, he said, is exactly what makes you extraordinary. Days turned into weeks. Their bond grew, not rushed, not defined, not named, but steady. He helped her paint the library walls. She made him tea during his visits. Sometimes they walked around the lake, talking about life without the pressure of outcomes. The town had begun whispering, of course, small towns always do, but Mare remained calm, unaffected. She had nothing to hide. One afternoon, during a sudden monsoon shower, Armand and Mare sheltered in the library's back room. The rain roared against the tin roof like applause from the heavens. Mare stood by the window, watching droplets race down the glass. Armand watched her instead, her calm silhouette, her quiet presence, the completeness of who she was. I used to think love was something to chase, he said suddenly. Or something to negotiate. But you've made me realize it's not something to hurry or demand. It's something that grows, like a seed. Mare turned slightly, her eyes searching his. Armand, are you saying? He shook his head gently. I'm not asking anything from you. I just want you to know that meeting you again has changed something in me. I feel grounded. Silence followed, not awkward, but thoughtful. Mare stepped closer, her voice soft. And what if, she said, I tell you that the girl you left behind never truly stopped caring? His heart thudded. Mare, I'm not expecting promises, she continued. I just want honesty. He nodded, overwhelmed by how simple and profound she made everything. Later that evening, as he prepared to leave town for a short business commitment, Mare handed him a small, handwritten note. For the journey, she said. Read it when you're alone. Armand obeyed. On the plane, he unfolded it gently. The note said, You were the first person who made me feel seen. I don't know what the future holds. But if your heart is still searching, mine is still waiting, quietly, without hurry. Mare. Armand closed his eyes, letting the message settle into him like a sunrise. He returned to town soon after, earlier than scheduled. He walked straight to the library. Mare was rearranging books, unaware he stood behind her. When she finally turned and saw him, surprise lit her eyes. You're back so soon? She asked. I didn't want to wait, he said simply. And then, in the quietest voice, he added, I don't want to leave again. not without knowing if we can build something together." Mare didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped toward him, stopping when they were close enough for their breaths to mingle. "Armand," she said softly, "love doesn't need grand gestures. It needs sincerity." He nodded. "Then I'll give you sincerity. Every day, in every way I can." Her eyes shimmered. For the first time, she reached for his hand, tentative but certain. "Then stay," she whispered. "Not as a promise written in stone, but as someone willing to grow with me." And in that small library, under the golden glow of evening lamps, the millionaire and the girl he had loved since childhood began a new chapter. Not rushed, not perfect, but honest, gentle, and beautifully real. Armand finally understood that love was not about conquering or winning or proving. It was about showing up, fully, sincerely, wholeheartedly. And Mare, with her untouched heart and unbreakable strength, became the compass he had been searching for all his life.